All right, we have to be serious here. Now, the next oil I want to talk about is a new product from AMSOIL that is a 5W30 European auto oil. Now, we have a 5W40 European auto oil, so why come out with a 5W30? And the truth is, you have to follow the manufacturers because both Mercedes, BMW, and Volkswagen now have a requirement for a 5W30 oil. What makes this oil unique and why I bring it to your attention and why you should pay attention to it is because this oil is it's called a SAPS, S-A-P-S, which is a sulfated ash and phosphate. I forget what the last letter's for, but what it means is that you have a very limited amount of phosphorus and zinc, and you have to have this because it's a requirement for the particular pollution control systems on these cars. It is a low ash, it's called, product. And if you look at this oil, you see that it meets Volkswagen 507, which we're being asked about. That's the new one. And it's got the European ACEA A3, B3, B4, Mercedes-Benz 22951, that's a new one, BMW LL04, and Porsche C30. Now, see up there it says low SAPS, sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur chemistry. It's the only one in our bag that meets those requirements. We don't have another one. So those are new requirements that are in the new 2010 Mercedes, Volkswagen, BMW, and Porsche. So you may find some shops scrambling right now to find this certification of oil because there's hardly any around except to buy it from Mercedes, BMW, or Volkswagen. And of course they're very proud of those oils at the Mercedes place, about $18 a quart. So this should be a good product for us, at least in an open window right now, until some more people come out with it. So if you have any European service places or places you've been talking to that have said they don't really have an interest, you may want to run this data bulletin off on this oil and take it down and tell them you're going to need this because this requirement exists already. They're just doing the service at the dealerships because nobody else has the oil. So I just took a case of this to one of my service centers because they do some Mercedes and some BMWs, and they've already run into this problem and had to get oil from the dealership to bring it over before they could do the service. So this was one that I'm glad AMSOIL brought it out. We were starting to get a lot of questions on that Volkswagen 507 series because again, those guys are scrambling around looking for it. And it is all to do with the emissions controls that are on these European cars that are required in Europe, which means that they're going to mess them up if they have, they're worried about the carryover, which isn't probably going to happen with AMSOIL anyway, but it's the same philosophy as the CJ4 diesel oil, where they had to reduce the additive package to protect the pollution control systems, so that if you had any carryover of this sulfated ash, phosphorus, or sulfur, if it ends up in the catalytic converter, it will poison the catalytic converter and ruin it, and then it's not going to do its job. So in Europe, they stipulated drastic changes to the motor oil to meet that requirement. In the US, we would be using 8/10 would be or 800 parts per million of these things would be our allowance. Theirs is about 500 parts per million, so it's much lower, and it requires, if you look at this oil, it's only got like I'd have to go look at the data, and it's like a 5.7 TBN. Now, the first question is, well, what's the extended drain on this oil? Well, probably none. The additive package is so limited, it's going to be limited to whatever the oil change is by the manufacturer. But believe me, the only oils that meet this requirement are going to be equally or more expensive than the AMSOIL version because it's a unique oil. It's going to rely upon a synthetic base stock and probably some organic moly in order to give it the anti-wear protection, because they're giving up so much of the regular anti-wear package, which comes in the form of sulfur and phosphorus and zinc. So that's a good product to know and understand. and to keep available for any time that you run into that. Now let's just talk about the European market just a little bit before we close on this particular topic. We still have the 540 European Auto Oil, and it's excellent. We have accounts that buy 10, 12 cases of that stuff because it matches right up with what they're trying to do. Now, the original ASL 5W30 is a product that a lot of BMW people use, okay, because it meets up good with their spec. New Mercedes. There are some new Mercedes that require 0W20, and I started selling 0W20 to my European auto specialist shop because it's a great 0W20. We make one, and Mobil makes one. And right now, nobody else makes one. So Mercedes has got a whole line which it recommends 0W20 synthetic engine oil. That's what it comes with from the factory. So there's another market. So we just have to be aware that in the European auto market, there's more and more shift towards high-performance synthetic engine oils. And so if you're going by someplace and you see it says European Auto Service, you ought to stop in there and just tell them that you have a number of things that'll work for them. Now, we continue to struggle to get all of the transmission requirements from BMW and Mercedes because they don't want to give them away. They give these oddball specs for Royal Dutch oil in Europe, and they're real hard to crack. And what usually happens is one of the sister companies like Mobil here in the United States, which there's a European Mobil, they will eventually slip up and start making something here to match that, and bang, that's when the people like AMSOIL and Valvoline and Castrol and everybody over here in the United States figure it out because somebody started to make it here and they can figure out what it is. But to get the specs from the Europeans, they don't want to turn them loose. And it becomes a little bit of a trade issue because under the Magnuson-Moss Act, they should have to turn them loose because we should be able to provide an equivalent product. And they know that, but they just ignore it. And since the country doesn't really want to get in a trade war over it, they just kind of let it ride. But BMW transmission fluid and Mercedes transmission fluid from the dealerships cost between $22 to $28 a quart. And so if you've got a repair shop that works on these things and they have to send the runner over to buy the stuff from the dealership, they don't get a wholesale break when they buy it. Then the dealership lets them have it for $28 a quart. Enjoy it, have a great day. When we break one of those and we can come in with a product that's $9 or $10 or $8 wholesale, these guys are just ecstatic. So keep that in mind, that you can solve a problem for an independent shop that works on these kind of things by going in and saying, we just might be able to solve some of your issues here, and you at least ought to have us available when these things come up to see if we can give you a much better price on oil than what those guys are doing. Okay? So that's it for European Auto Oil. We'll move on.